Hello, RotoBallers. I'm Matt Donnelly, and if you're like me, you're not ready for your fantasy football to come to an end. Luckily for all of us, it doesn't have to come to an end, as we still have DFS for a few more weeks, and we have those fantasy playoff leagues. What are fantasy playoff leagues? Well, there are a couple popular ones out there that are a little different from one another, but I'm here to talk to you about these leagues and give you some tips on how to be successful. There is the best ball, set it and forget it type league where you draft a team ahead of the playoffs, much like you would a redraft team. Then there is the DFS style one and done type leagues in which you set a new lineup each and every week, but once you use a player, they're no longer available. Once a team is eliminated, you lose those players as well. So you can see how the strategies may differ from league to league depending on which one you choose. Now, regardless of the league that you choose, you must first identify the teams poised to take a deep run, trying to stay one step ahead of the competition by prioritizing the top seeds as they are likely to be there in the end. In best ball, attack these players early on in the draft. My preference is to load up on the number 2 seeds because if they advance to the Super Bowl, you gain that extra game thanks to their participation in the Super Wildcard weekend in which the top seeds receive a bye week. If the number 2 seeds fail to reach the Super Bowl but they do make the conference finals, you still get the same amount of games as you would from the top seeds. So you have to think that there is a reward to this risk in this strategy, and it's well worth it. Plus, you can make a strong case for a Buffalo Bills Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl if you really come to think about it. In a one and done league, project those winning teams and leave them in the queue until later on the playoffs so you do not burn the good players early on. And that's probably the biggest difference between these two formats. In both leagues, you identify the top teams, but in one league, you draft the top players, whereas the other, you save them for a little bit later. Now, more so than your regular fantasy leagues, get your quarterback. Only 14 teams make the playoffs, so choosing a quarterback is going to be key. The playoffs are short, and quarterbacks matter. In the best ball redraft, you need to get one in the first round from a Super Bowl favorite. In the DFS style, it's more important to find a favorable matchup where the quarterback can produce, but ultimately his team is eliminated. Now, in the redraft style league, you want to get that signal caller whose team is poised to make a deep run, as the quarterback position is likely to net you the greatest return when it comes to fantasy. Expect those quarterbacks to come off the board early in those fantasy drafts, especially those quarterbacks that are on the 1 and 2 seeds. Those quarterbacks are Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Dak Prescott. In the one and done playoff league, you want to play the matchups, but you want your quarterback's team to lose. As weird as that sounds, if players you choose the week you choose them end up losing, this is going to open up a greater player pool later on in this tournament. In this style, I like to keep all my choices at the quarterback position from the same conference so that when the Super Bowl rolls around, I'll have some options to me as well. There's nothing worse than having your championship week come down to whether or not Sam Darnold may or may not get a snap in the Super Bowl. It is important to remember this difference when it comes to these two styles of leagues. Redraft, best ball, set and forget it, whatever you want to call it, you want players that are going to make a deep run. And while you play the matchups in this format, they're not nearly as important as they are in the DFS one and done style league. In either league, stacking helps. Whether it's a weekly thing or something you do at the very beginning, those stacks are going to matter. Get your quarterback and pair him with his best target. Brock Purdy with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs. Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb. Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers. Depending on where you select, it could force your hand on who you draft and how you approach this draft altogether. Again, where the two leagues differ, I wouldn't necessarily go with a Prescott Lamb in round 1 of my one and done type leagues, because if they win and I use them, I lose them for the rest of the playoffs. And if the Cowboys make a deep run, that is going to drastically hurt your chances. Instead, in that one and done type league, I'm going to prioritize a Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans stack, which is much more attractive considering that the Eagles are technically favored to beat the Buccaneers, which would allow me to maximize my fantasy points and have that Cowboy stack later on. Now, in the redraft league, Prescott and CeeDee Lamb is one of the top stacks you possibly get in your lineups. Now, continuing with this kind of thought process, just because something goes one way doesn't mean you have to continue that trend. Do not be a fantasy sheep. In redraft, if you miss out on these top options at quarterback, pivot. Maybe you end up out of these playoffs early, but maybe, just maybe, you differentiated your lineup enough to become the favorite. What do I mean? If the Allens, Prescotts, Jackson, and Purdy's all go off the board, don't be afraid to grab yourself a Flacco here. Cleveland is one of the favorite underdogs entering the playoffs, and Flacco is coming off of 4 straight 300-yard games to close out the regular season. This makes the Browns a very dangerous team and a team that could make a deep run in the playoffs and put you in a good position. Targeting players on losing teams, it's important. Good players on bad teams are better than bad players on good teams. I don't care how you want to look at this. Managers are going to be willing to draft players on good teams knowing they're more likely to advance, but that doesn't mean you pass up on an RB1 or a wide receiver 1 on a lesser team to grab a wide receiver 3 on a better team. In one and done formats, do not burn those good players early. Again, this all goes back to identifying the teams that you expect to take a deep run. The one thing that we know is any given Sunday, anything can happen, any team can win. Second, adding a player like Mike Evans, for example, is still likely to produce more fantasy points in one game than, say, Jawan Jennings of the 49ers, even if the 49ers make the Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphins, they're the underdogs heading into Arrowhead. This doesn't mean I'm going to take Kadarius Toney over Tyreek Hill. No, don't be silly. Get your good players. You still want studs, even if they're not projected to win that week. At the end of the day, it comes down to choosing the right players at the right time, choosing the right matchups, and choosing the right team to win or lose on said given week. And the best way to do all this? Head over to RotoBaller.com and the RotoBaller Discord channel for all the latest fantasy football news and analysis. As well, make sure that you are subscribed to the RotoBaller YouTube channel to gain that edge on the competition.